Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Lessons for Life live stream. I am one of your hosts, Eleni Anastas, and I am grateful to be once again joined by my talented co-host, Jim Kunkel. How are you tonight, Jim?
Elaney, we were off last week, and it seems like it's been forever. So I'm so very grateful that we're back here together tonight to be able to talk about an important topic, which is timelessness.
Yes, and the original catalyst for us doing this series is actually Jim's idea. I'll give credit where credit is due. He read my book, My Reinvented Life, Finding Purpose in the Pain. And I very, methodically, I put a lot of time and effort into choosing the topics for each chapter. Because to me, we all know that change is inevitable. And purposeful reinvention is a vital part of navigating that change to move forward. So I chose timelessness. I knew it had to be the subject of one of the chapters. So I'm excited for us to dive in. Jim, would you like to start?
Well, what I want to do is also give a shout out that you can still get My Reinvented Life, Elaney's book that she talked about. It's one of my favorites. I go to it all the time. This series really revolves around it, but it also expands on a lot of the stuff that Elaney talks about. But it's a bestseller. It's available on Amazon. It's still available on other things. So please take advantage of while it's still available. Buy your own copy. You're going to love it. I love it. You're going to love it too. Thank you very much. But, Elaney, what I want to do is kind of open up and talk about, what does timelessness mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, when I think of timelessness, the first thing that comes to me is enduring. And the other thing is permanent. And then timeless is obviously part of timelessness. But for me, when I think of something that's permanent, enduring, and timeless, I always have this vision in my mind, world is crazy. It's like a rushing river all around us, right? And I always imagine myself as that polished pebble that's just in that stream and letting all that rush over me. So for me, being that permanent thing of a pebble and enduring that rushing river around me all the time, I think that's so important. And, that's kind of what I think a little bit about timeless. And I'm also very curious to see, everyone has a different take, I think, on this topic.
Yes.
And what is your take on timelessness?
Well, I appreciate your analogy as well, because when you are truly timeless, you are enduring. And you do stand the traditional test of time, as they say. But I also want to take a brief moment to also throw in there the topic of ageism, because ageism is rampant in the workplace. I mean, people deal with it professionally and personally. I had read studies that said literally 2 out of 3 workers between the ages of 45 and 74 said they have dealt with ageism. And I'm going to be getting fired up a lot throughout this live stream because we're going to be sharing a lot of examples, and some of them our own that's personal to us. But what really hits me at the core when people reference ageism and how they've been denied advancement or denied the opportunity to even begin a job, it has nothing to do with their skill set, their experience, their knowledge, their abilities. It's all the number on their birth certificate. That's it. And to me, we're depriving when people do act solely on that. And again, not looking at your skills, your experience, your abilities, you're denying the world. And who knows, people close to you, an opportunity to learn and grow. So timelessness and ageism, I think timelessness is one of the best things we can do to combat, if you will, those that have to deal with ageism on a regular level, whether it's professional or personal.
Yeah, you really have to have the capacity to withstand and survive, difficult conditions or challenges. And ageism, I think, is a perfect example of that. When you can have timelessness, it really kind of focuses on your resilience, your inner strength, your perseverance. And a good example would be that when you have someone who has the ability to overcome numerous obstacles or hardships in your life, that people always say that person has a remarkable endurance. And when I think of ageism, and I throw this out there, a friend of mine back in the 90s. He looked very old for his age. Got to a point in the company, said, "Hey, we're going to eliminate your position." And really, he was performing to peak, efficiency. He was very effective. He was delivering what he was supposed to do on objectives and goals. And it was just like they wanted to put an old sales guy out the pasture. And what he did, which I found amazing, was that he talked with his wife. He was in his early 60s. And what they did was he became an independent representative. And one of the first one of the first products he lined up was something that went competitively against the companies that we work for. So he was basically selling against our companies into the customers. But he did that until he decided to hang it up in 72, 73. But he walked away where he was actually, able to overcome that and really kind of blossom and even do better than when he was working for a corporation.
I love hearing that. And I think, yes, David is sharing that we are considered technologically challenged. Yes, those of us north of a certain age. And then Meg had responded to that as well. Exactly. Let me just do that for you. I don't mind questions like, can I help you with something? Do you need assistance? But let me just do that for you. That's making the assumption that you simply aren't capable of doing it yourself. And to me, that could be true in any arena, obviously not just where technology is concerned. But with ageism and timelessness, I think it's so important for people to be mindful that there's so much externally out there, whether it's, in the media, in certain environments, in certain social circles, because again, people can experience it personally as well, not just in the workplace, whether you have your own business or you're in corporate. And that when people hear, well, they're past a certain point, or things automatically diminish because you're north of a certain age. When every time I've heard the phrase or have been asked the question, aren't you past your prime? I believe 100% that you and only you get to decide what your prime is and how and when it plays out. Now, of course, physically, I think we could all say, no, there's certain things that I can't do that I could do 30, 40 years ago, of course. But there's so much that we still can do that makes us valuable, contributing members of society. And I know you agree.
I totally agree with that. And, what comes to mind is a quote from Angela Duckworth, and she's a professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I'm in Pittsburgh. She's on the other side of the state in Philadelphia. But she said, this is what she said: the only way to deal with this life is to find one's passion and endure whatever comes. And I think I focus more on that quote today, more so than I did. Let's say if I were to go wind back the clock and share that quote with my 20-year-old self or 40-year-old self, I'm in my late 50s now. And so my perspective is much different than what it was when I was a 20-some-year-old trying to make it in the world. So,
but you bring up a great point about the passion. And yes, David's sharing an excellent point. Yes, there are, quote unquote, certain things that are technically in place, but if they're not enforced, it's the empty threat, if you will. It doesn't serve any useful purpose. Because I know when I was dealing with the aftermath and healing from the trauma that turned my world upside down, that was the catalyst for my book.
Yes.
When I finally got to the point where I know I need a new chapter, I know I need to begin again. And I was in my mid-50s, but I was in no way, shape, or form done. But every time I thought about, okay, what else can I do? What can my next chapter be? I was met with, why bother? You're already in your 50s. Why don't you just retire? Isn't it too late to start something new? All of these dream killers, if you will. And it is so, so vital to be protective of your dreams. Because if you have that desire to be, do, or have something more in your life, you want to create another chapter, it does not matter what your age is. Be protective of that, because I promise you, If you have that desire in you, it's there for a reason. And this circles back to what you brought up as finding your passion. Because when you're passionate about your work, and I'm very passionate about helping people and supporting people, creating that next chapter, helping them create the income and the impact and the desire that they want in their own lives, we have to hang on to that and be protective of that. And I just want to share briefly that people are going to project their limiting beliefs onto you, and always know it's never about you. They probably wouldn't get up and go for it. They may be living with regret. So we just have to be mindful that what you're hearing, you can observe, but don't absorb.
Very good. In researching on the timelessness side, one of the things I came across was the concept of old soul traits.
Mm-hmm.
And old souls are, when you think of them, they're quiet observers, they're gentle philosophers, they're empathetic listeners, and they're always there when the world is, all that noise around that's going on around the world. And so, even saying earlier when I was talking about my perspectives when I was in, 20s and 30s and even into my 40s, you get wrapped up in that world noise. And as you start to kind of become that old soul, you start to say, hey, there's more to life. It's important to be yourself and do what you believe, follow your dreams. And there is always a way. There's always a way. It's never, the end of the story. The story continues on and on and on until you draw your last breath.
Yeah.
It's really, you have to believe in yourself. And I know that could be very difficult, but it is very possible. And, just like I mentioned my friend's story earlier, I remember, he was like, what am I going to do? And he totally reinvented himself. And, that was my first really exposure to a reinvention moment. But I didn't even know at that time it was reinvention. I was just thinking he took a risk and it paid off.
Yeah.
But it was really, that was my first introduction to reinvention. But it, until really we got in the pandemic and I started really looking into transformation, reinvention, those concepts, that was foreign to me in my younger days.
Oh, I think all of us of our generation, if you will, we grew up with what did they call it? The 40-40-40 club. You work, 40 years and get 40% of your salary when you retire. We were just taught that we were going to pick a lane and we were going to stay in that lane till we were ready to ride off into the sunset. And it's absolutely not the way of the world now, especially when I think of people reinventing themselves. But I also want to mention the caveat that reinvention doesn't have to be a total major life overall.
Yeah.
It could be as simple as adding a new habit. It could be changing something you're doing that in the long game makes a significant impact. Like you're in a plane and they could be 1 to 2 degrees off of that final destination. That 1 to 2 degree, I read that it's 95% of the time the planes are off target by 1 or 2 or 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Now, in and of itself, that doesn't sound like much, but at the end of a long trip, that could be hundreds of miles.
Yeah.
So don't think, well, I don't have the time or the energy to reinvent myself. You can start small and build on that. And let's share.
I'm gonna bring this one up. Another good one from Carl. In my lifetime, I had almost a reverse occur early in my corporate career. I was too young, or so young that my candidacy for a project was questioned. My attitude changed some minds. Most importantly, the mind of my new manager. Moving from rural Ireland to China was not easy, but we all made the right choices. We can discriminate against the young too. There should be zero tolerance for any discrimination. I am so grateful that I was in a supporting environment that allowed the risk. I can't read the rest of that, but the risk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I so appreciate you sharing that. And yes, ageism is both ends of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we need to go back to and make sure we're focusing on experience, ability, skill set, knowledge, whether you're 25 or 65 or, anywhere in between. And to me, it's important also when people can share what they've done. I started my business in my mid 50s. I appeared on national TV for the first time at 60. I became an international best-selling author at 61. And I promise you, I'm not sharing any of this to impress you. It doesn't matter. But to impress upon you that I didn't listen to all those people that said, aren't you past your prime? Isn't it too late to start something new? Why don't you just retire? No, going back to what you talked about, passion in the beginning. I was so passionate about creating this new chapter in my life and knowing that I could and wanted to help people do the same, that I had to block out, again, be very protective of your goals and dreams, especially when others around you are projecting those limiting beliefs onto you, because none of us can stop the proverbial clock from ticking. But regardless of our age, we always have control over our beliefs and our thoughts. So that's on us. Let's own that responsibility and keep creating.
Well, and the thing too, think of the unrealized realities. If you back when you dealt with, what had been done to you, the wrong that had been done to you, if you let that dominate you and you listened to others and you said, this is the best it's ever going to be for me, I'm just going to have to basically put up the white flag and surrender. You didn't do that. You persevered, you moved on, and think about the changes not only that you did to yourself, but even all those around. Like I said, you and I met during the pandemic, and it was because of, me reading your post and then talking with you and then, reading your book and everything like that. That really changed me because, at that time I was going through, like I say, it was when I was looking at reinvention and transformation. And there's a reason for you doing what you're doing, me doing what I'm doing, everyone who's watching us, what we're doing. And as a community, we can come together and we can really kind of support each other and say, you know what, you be the best you that you can be what you want to be. That's really what's important. You'll find a way. You really will.
Yes. And David shared that retirement does not mean you stop pursuing your interests. Absolutely. And Carl, of course, the right attitude is crucial. There's so many things that can be learned, that can be taught. But if somebody doesn't come in with the right mindset, the right attitude, and I know as someone that was in education for decades, I'd much rather have a student in front of me that had the desire to learn, the willingness to learn, that had an open mind, than someone that just came in and thought they knew it all and that they didn't have to learn and grow. No one wants to be around that.
Yeah.
And yes, people who are passionate never retire.
It's true.
That is so true. I think of, my mom, who was a great example to me. Now, the last several years of her life, she was almost completely blind, crippled in a wheelchair, on oxygen 24/7, and in constant pain. But from my perspective, Lula was timeless because she had this amazing sense of humor and spirit and zest for life. And the biggest thing that I think helps us remain timeless is she had that desire to learn. She always wanted to learn something new. And while she couldn't exercise the physical muscles, in her body, if we keep exercising our mind, if we keep learning, if we keep growing, to me, that only enhances our timelessness.
Yeah. Lainey, can we move on to talking about, some timeless skills and attributes that a business leader should have? Yes. The first one that I encountered in really kind of researching this is, showing your employees appreciation and know them as individuals. I'm so lucky in the position I have currently that not only my boss, but my boss's boss knows who I am. I even had the amazing thing when, if you remember, some weeks back, my pet Lily, she passed away, and I posted her passing on LinkedIn and just said, take time and hug your pet and everything like that. And even the chief executive officer of my global corporation reached out and posted condolences and then shared family dog that they had that passed away this year. So what I like about this is when you work at a place and they show appreciation, but they know you for who you are. You're
Yes.
Jim, you're Elaney, not that person who works for so and so.
Yes. And that's vital for all of us because we all want that acknowledgement. People still buy from people and people still work together, in the business. It's not just filling a slot. It's embracing the humanity of those that are on your team. And I think that is so important. And that's a lovely example, that you shared from your employer. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. And another thing that really kind of comes to mind too is, the companies that also, encourage their employees to take time off. And it could be time off related to wellness, to furthering their education, to even team building opportunities where, we're gonna do a day and we're gonna do this type of an event and things like that. But when you have that work-life balance, and we all are in a society today where you have to have, if you have a mother and a father, in most cases they're both working and they have to work to be able to really provide. But to have companies out there that really look at that work-life balance is important, because you want to have stability with your employees, but you also want to make sure that you do have healthy and happy employees, because studies show that happy employees make a healthy company.
Absolutely. And to me, part of that happiness is having something to look forward to, being future focused. And I know that's what kept my mom going, even when, again, being in constant pain and she couldn't physically take care of herself. She always had something to look forward to. And keeping your employees happy, help them in that direction. Like you're saying, providing the opportunities, giving them the time to, explore, research what works for them. I used to live next door to a gentleman named Bob, and he's currently in his 100th year of life. I just spent some time with him on a trip to Michigan. And this gentleman, a voracious learner, he always talked about something he was going to be doing. Besides learning, he was learning a new language when I met him. Besides doing things like that, he always talked about the future. And I met him when he was in his 90s.
Wow.
So again, and I think that's a big reason of why he's now enjoying his 100th year of life, because he's still future focused. He still has the desire to learn. And it's never, ever too late to change an attitude, to change a mindset. I know you see I get excited. I want to briefly also share a quick story about another neighbor of mine, Marion. And I met her when she was, yes, being future focused. Yes. When Marion was in her early 90s, I met her. And she just had this joy about her, this effervescence. She had a more active social life than I have ever had. She was, 40 years older. And I just adored her. We became fast friends and would dine together every month. And I remember one day asking her, I said, so have you always just had this amazing attitude about life? You're always future focused. You always have something to look forward to, and you have this joy about you. And she said, oh, hell no. I used to worry about everything. I used to be riddled with anxiety. I never enjoyed life. And I said, what changed? And she said, my husband at that point, it was over 50 years, had died suddenly when she was 79. And she said that hit her very hard, of course, understandably.
Yep.
But it was also her wake-up call. And she said, I didn't want to enter another decade, starting her 80th year, being miserable. And she said, I realized that there's just so much that just doesn't matter. And I've been worrying about things I've had no control over. I've not been future focused. She said she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. And she gave herself 20 years of living joyfully. She passed away at 99.
Wow.
She gave herself 2 decades by changing her mindset and her attitude at 79, because is God is my witness, attitude's going to trump age every day of the week.
Well, if you give yourself 2 decades at 79, that's almost like living another whole lifetime.
Yes, yes. So I think it's amazing. Yeah.
It is. It's amazing. It also goes to the power of the mind over, if you're going to let the stresses, I was actually talking to somebody who, a friend of mine made it to a vice president and a very stressful job. And just recently, within the last couple of years, he had a stroke and it debilitated him and could cause problems. And the company ultimately cut his position. And the thing with it was it goes to that ageism, back to that again. That also happens when people encounter certain, medical conditions sometimes. And, him and his wife, relatively, right after they had to start selling assets to start pay for things. He was going on disability, which is, it's not a sustainable life that way. But, the thing he regretted, in talking with me, that he didn't save enough money. And that was the one thing, he said, I didn't have enough time. I didn't save. And it's, you don't want to say anything to somebody like that because you want to keep them focused and encouraged and everything like that. But a lot of it, you really got to start planning for the future from day one. But it's difficult. I even myself, it's very difficult to do that.
And things happen, things come up, but I don't ever want to see someone take themselves out of the game, so to speak, because of external circumstances or someone else's limiting beliefs. We all know, shit's going to happen.
Yeah, I think
years ago, we were all thrown for the biggest curveball.
Yeah, I think for something like with my friend, what I would recommend, I even, something I would think about is, maybe you start a company that focuses on people with handicaps to help them learn new job skills to be able to go into different type of new markets and things like that. There's a lot of ways you could challenge that, which is debilitating to you, to overcome that by doing other things.
Yeah. But that whole beginning again, that can be so intimidating, because we've talked about examples and I share many, in my book. Well, I think of, Betty White, who I adored. She had the longest career in television. She won her first Emmy at 53 and her last Emmy at 88. I thank God that they were smart enough in Hollywood to not let ageism keep her from being in front of us, because the world was a much funnier place when Betty was around. Or Louise Hay. She started her amazing publishing company. I think it was at 61, became a New York Times bestselling author. Grandma Moses. Yeah. She didn't start painting until she was 78. Hallmark purchased the rights to her work, to put on the greeting cards. And some of her works are in the Smithsonian Institute. So it doesn't matter. And you could be doing a complete 180. There was another gentleman I read about. His name is Jerry Saltz, and he was a long-distance truck driver into his 40s, but he always was passionate about art. He just never did anything about it. He's like, I got to make money as a trucker. He ended up becoming an art critic in New York, and at age 67, won a Pulitzer Prize for art criticism. 2 decades before that, he was a truck driver. So thankfully, people like that, Betty White, Louise Hay, Colonel Sanders, it started KFC at 5. There's just countless examples. And, I get excited about this because I think it's important that we talk about them, because these people completely reinvented their lives, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. So please don't hold yourself back because of other people renting space in your head.
Very good point. Eleni, we're almost at the bottom of the hour. Next Monday, another great topic, which is forgiveness. And I will be asking a lot of forgiveness from you next week. So
it's going to be a wonderful topic. And I do want to share, well, first, before I tie a little closing, Jim, what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you if they want to connect with you and talk again?
Oh, yeah. The best way is on LinkedIn. You could just look under James Kunkel, And also, you can follow all the content I do in addition to Lessons for Life. I do other content as well, and I'd appreciate any type of following and reach out and all that kind of good stuff like that. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And of course, you can find me here on LinkedIn as well. Or my business is branded under my own name, Eleni Anastas. So please don't hesitate to reach out with questions, comments. I'm always happy to connect. And before we say goodbye, I just really want everyone to remember that regardless of where you're at in your journey, none of us are meant to do this alone. We all need someone to help guide us, to get us to realize our full potential. And I'm telling you, it's an act of courage to reach out for support when you need it. So if you do have that dream or that desire to be, do, or have something else in your life, regardless of age or circumstance, I hope that you will honor yourself and go for it. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next Monday.